Hello folks, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me. Well, today we are, as promised in my recent trailer, we're going to be doing a tale of two Victors. This is a tale of two Victors as in scale models of military aircraft. Not a tale of two cities. I'm sorry if I may have confused you with that. If you're looking for Charles Dickens recitals, you'll have to move along. There's nothing to see here. Off to the Charles Dickens channels on YouTube with you. Sorry if I confused you. Anyway, back to the meat and potatoes of this. So we previously did a tale of two Wellingtons, and we compared an old 70s Matchbox Wellington Mk2, I think it was, with the newer Airfix one from about 2016-2017. And today we have a similar setup. We have got this amazing Matchbox, 1986 Matchbox. So this is actually after Lesney, the original company, went out of business. They went bust in 1982, and they sold the rights. I think it was a company called Universal Products, or was that similar name to that? And they bought the moulds and the sort of rights to it, and then later it became. They ended up being bought by Revell, of course. So not all of it, but some of the moulds were bought by Revell, some of the armour kits and things like that. This, though, is... So it's kind of in this interim period, which we'll look at in more detail in a second, but these kits were actually made in Macau. And I wasn't... this is when I sort of lost interest in Matchbox a little bit personally, because I could see the quality didn't seem quite as good. I didn't think so, compared to what it had been before under Lesney. And you'll see some of the other issues that building it in Macau brings with it as well, but we'll get into that later. And then we are going to compare it. Now, we've got to be fair about this. It's 1986, so you know, it's, what's that? That's 35 years ago. Okay, it's a long time ago. Now we have the latest technology, pretty much latest, from Airfix from 2016, which is the B2 BS, the Bomber Strike version with its nuclear weapon. The Matchbox kit is actually the K2 tanker version, which of course saw service in the Gulf War. So let's get into it then. This is, as I promised, the mother of all battles and big victors. It's going to be great, but we'll do one at a time. So we'll move the huge, humongous Airfix kit out of the way. Sorry, I should just point out, sometimes people say, why do you wear gloves and all this stuff? Why do you got so many lamps? Well, my lamps, by the way, I can use them for all sorts of things, and I prefer a setup that's very flexible rather than having fixed lamps. But my gloves, yet again, we have kits here that I don't own. These have been lent to me by someone who wanted to see them reviewed and thought it'd be interesting to see the comparison, really, for people to comment, you know. So the great thing about this is we've been told that this one's, they're not in sealed bags or anything. This one is in sealed bag, but the owner, who's a relative of mine, has actually said, please, by all means, open the bag so people can see it properly, do a proper review. Obviously, unlike a Wingnut Wings or something like that, it's not a super high value kit. You can buy these from Airfix today, no problem. So it's not a collector's item in the true sense. So it's very kind of you to let us do that, because we'll see a lot more detail. I'm sure it's going to be a peach, but we'll move it because it's huge. Get that out of the way safely over there. Nice soft spot, and let's get into the Matchbox. Let's see then, bring you right in so you can see this. Now, first thing you notice with these Matchbox kits from the sort of mid-80s onwards, this Macau production, they changed the box art, which I didn't like. It's almost going towards Revell, isn't it, already? With this, they all now have this black strip, and then there's multicoloured bars up the side. They're no longer focusing on the same quality of artwork. It is a Roy Huxley, the great artist, Matchbox used, but they've trimmed it and crammed it, and they've cropped it right down, so it kind of spoils any great work he did. You've only seen half the aircraft almost. So I think it's really daft because they've gone and sort of spoiled that. But anyway, on the end you can see this is also Roy Huxley's artwork, and again spoiled because of all this completely OTT, very 1980s sort of flashes and strange colours with the black. So this is, obviously it's PK551. On the side you've got the, shows the markings, you've got three options. They're all RAF Marham, which of course these days has recently been a Tornado base, and it's now an F-35 base. But this is where the tanker squadrons used to be based. So you've got number 55 Squadron, you've got 57 Squadron, and 2 through 2 OCU, also Marham, and 75. So it's all late 70s, 75, 79 and 82. Now, this is worth looking at. Some of these Matchbox kits, they come in 3 colours as you know, or 2 colours on the small ones. Some of the colours they choose are really ridiculous and others are really good. I've got to say, that colour choice, I think that's really cool. I think that's one of the best colour choices I've seen in the Matchbox kit. So yeah, that I like. I think they've got that right. But then we've got this Chinese writing here, which that doesn't really bode well, does it? It hasn't got any English to go with it, so I'm not sure what that means. There's no Chinese writing on the other side, so that's very curious. Anyway, without further ado, we'll look at it straight away. So let's get into it. But bear in mind it's an older kit, so we have to give it a little bit of leeway. Pop that there, it's safe. And straight away, so we've got a white sprue, big one. It's a big kit, this. We've got clear parts. They don't come bagged or anything, unfortunately. That's just the way they were. And then we've got this sort of I'm not sure what colour that is. It's kind of green. It's like a very dark olive green. We'll come to that in a second. And we have a grey sprue. Yeah, I'm not sure the actual plastic colours look quite as pretty as they do on the box the way it's depicted, but we'll see later. Then we have got, now here's a novel thing, some Chinese glue. Oh, I'm sure that's going to make your model look great. I'm not sure about this, but sorry about that, bit of focus trouble. Not sure that I would recommend this glue. A, it's very old. Even if it was made yesterday, I'm not sure I'd be putting that in my nice Victor kit. And then at the back of the box, we have got various, well, there's a tag here, which I don't know whether that's a correction or information, and frankly what it is, because it's all in Chinese, so that's a little bit unhelpful. And the instructions on the glue, also unhelpful. Actually, if you think about it, that could be a bit dangerous, couldn't it? I mean, that glue could be super glue, it could be rubber glue, it could be some, you know, cement, polystyrene cement, it could be anything, quite frankly. But anyway, let us have a look at these. Oh, there's a rogue piece, but sorry, it's just a bit of the sprue that's detached. Right then, now then, let's get into what we have here. I'm going to tell you now, I'm getting a bit of a bad feeling about this, because, let's bring you in, you'll see. Right, so we have got the instruction book, and it seems to be, so far, entirely in Chinese. So this is Macau Chinese. Oh yes, more of it here, that's helpful. Okay, I'm not sure what that is supposed to tell us. Oh dear, this is a bit strange, isn't it? Oh my goodness, let's just zoom out a bit more. First thing you'll notice, well, second thing after the Chinese, and the fact there's no English whatsoever. There is a couple of English words. They have got here ejection seat, starboard, port, but virtually nothing is written in English. And the instruction book, look at this leaflet, how small it is. It's tiny, it's literally like half the scale of the normal, you know, the 24 scale Spitfire and Messerschmitt. They're big, you know, big leaflets twice this size. This is just A4, A3 obviously if you unfold the whole thing, but A3, and that's it. So, a bit odd. Anyway, let's have a closer look. I have to zoom in more than normal because it's so small. So it offers you the 3 different options, A, B or C. And then it basically, you start up by building the cockpit such as it is, and then you've got your underwing tanks, you've got your starboard aileron, you build your tail, and then it's the port wing and aileron. Put your engines in, there's like a, yeah, it's not much of an engine, it's just the impellers at the front of the engine, fan blades. Then you're bringing in here, you've got same on the other side, and then there's like a wingtip section which is separate, and it's got like a little cutout piece, not sure why they've done that, but anyway. And then you've got your drogue system for the tanker that goes on the wing, further toward the wingtips, and deploys the actual drogue baskets, which obviously are the thing which the refuelling is done with. Then we've got, you're bringing it all together as the 2 sides of the fuselage, and you're going to bring in, oh yeah, here we go, the drogue fairing, that's going to be brought in here. And then you bring the two halves together, obviously, and glue it all up. It looks very conventional, doesn't it, really? Then you've got your air brakes, and you've got your tail cone, which of course contains parachute on the Victor. And you've got your nose wheel, main gear with the wheels, and then we're into putting all the wings together. So the wings come in two sections each side, because of the sheer size of it. Now, if Matchbox are true to form, and I don't know, because I've never actually seen this kit before, but if they're true to form, then this will go together fairly easily, I think. It shows your air brake options here, where you can have it open or closed, and then you've got your tail plane, and for some bizarre reason they've split it port and starboard, so you're going to have a join there, I think, which is a bit unfortunate, but anyway. And then you've got all these various refueling pods, pitot heads, etc. going underneath, some fairings, cockpit, nose compartment window here to go on, and then finally you're bringing in your pressurised underwing fuel tank, air intakes, cockpit doors for the gear, sorry, cockpit nose wheel door, and cockpit door and nose wheel door, I should say. And then you've got the drogues. You've actually got drogues. Oh, that's quite cool, isn't it? Let's just zoom in a bit more for that. That's quite good. I didn't know that was going to be on it, actually. So they hang out the back, which is good. How good the actual plastic is we shall see. And then finally you bring in all your remaining fairings and underwing tanks together, and you're going to put in your flaps here, and then you've got your gear going in, and finally crew door and little ladder, which is quite cool. That's quite nice. And then you've got the, you know, again, nothing is explained in English, which is really weird. This is this Mk2 thing going on. It should say, you know, paint guide there, and they've taken bits of the images from the original paint guide, but there's no English at all. And it says Matchbox Group of Companies. Matchbox is a trademark of the Matchbox Toy Company. So Matchbox 1983 Limited, printed and made in. So this, what this tells us here is that this was conceptualised in 1983, just when they'd gone bust. And obviously there was a bit of a hiatus then before it actually came out in 86. So they've obviously had these images, and then they've done it in a rather cheaper, frankly nastier way. And there's nothing about the plane that you can read in English, which is very unfortunate. Anyway, we move on. Let's have a look at the decals. They look okay. Now, Matchbox decals are usually really rather good, to be honest. I've never had any problem with them. Even when they're old, they seem to work. They're like cockroaches that survived the nuclear holocaust. Well, almost. Sometimes they go a bit yellow. It's the cover tissue which gives the problem normally, but there isn't any here, so no problem. This looks great. Odd that there is only one of the big roundels, which I find a bit strange, and then you've got lots of sort of high vis day glow parts that draw attention to various parts of the refueling system, I think, and you've got your stencils all on there as well. But that's a nice looking stencil sheet. That's the best part so far, actually. Right, let's have a look. What have we got here? Okay. No. It's quite big, isn't it? So here we've got the colour callouts. Again, completely in Mandarin, I think it is, which is not very helpful. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how a young modeller was supposed to make any sense of this whatsoever. If you were like 12 or 10, you'd just give up, wouldn't you? It's just, there's no English at all. Now here's an interesting thing that I didn't know, so just to prove I'm not that knowledgeable. It's only got one round. It's like an American style where it has a roundel. The RAF roundel is only on the port wing and not on the starboard. I didn't know that. It's quite interesting. And it shows you the positions of all these stencils and dayglow markings we spoke of. On the opposite side, you've got your side views and showing the positions relative of, again, all these very sort of high vis markings that go on these fuel pods. Drogue deploying pods, and it shows you the difference between the three. It does have some English here, just saying which version is which, but that is it. There is no more English on this sheet, which is a bit disappointing. So actually, quite a surprise. I'm not sure who they thought the target market was on that, but anyway, we'll crack on and have a look at the actual plastic, because Matchbox very rarely disappoint us, in all fairness. So, first sprue, it's this massive one with the fuselage on it. Now then, this is big, isn't it? This is huge. It's going to be a big old model. You're going to need a fair room in your cabinet for this. Quite hard plastic, as is normal with Matchbox. Oh dear. I'm afraid that we have a problem. We have got raised panel lines, which is not good. A lot of raised panel lines here. Can you see that? That isn't very nice, to be honest. That's a bit odd. Now, the last time we had this, it's nasty. It's finely done in terms of it's consistent, but raised panel lines, come on, this is not like Matchbox at all. It's very, very hard. All the way along it is, yeah. That's a bit disappointing if I'm brutally honest. I mean, I don't know what it would go together like, but what was the other Matchbox kit that I reviewed and I got very cross about it? It was the Curtis Warhawk and Kitty Hawk, wasn't it? And that had a lot of, everything was raised, and it was raised hideously, so it was like ridges, you know. Didn't like that at all. It's not that dissimilar. It's not actually quite as extreme, and it's on a bigger plate, so you don't notice it quite as much. So, I don't know, you can get rid of it, maybe sand it out or something, but I don't really understand why, because I'm trying to remember back, and the two models I never reviewed, which I did own and then sold rather stupidly, if I'm honest, I had the Lancaster and the B17. I don't think they were raised. I don't think they were raised panel lines. I just sold them because I thought I'd never make them, and they took up a bit of room. The boxes are fairly big, similar to this actually. But anyway, moving on. A very rudimentary cockpit floor, it has to be said. Show you here. That's sort of a very basic cockpit floor. And then we have got the tail with the rudder. Rudder looks nicely full. Now the tail, yeah, some of it's raised and some of it's recessed. That's a bit confusing, isn't it? Yeah, so they could have recessed it all. I don't really know why they went that route. I think the tail cone is quite nice here. Don't you see that? The tail cone bit. This is where the air brake deploys, and the parachute, drone parachute. Let's just look at it that way up as well. It's a little bit flashy as well. Again, you see, you know, you just get the feeling that once the original company Leslie went out of business, and I think that these, you know, asset stripper types, I think that's what these Universal guys were. I think they were asset stripping, trying to pump this out cheaply in Macau, trying to make a few quid really. It doesn't look like a typical Matchbox sprue, this. It looks more like an Airfix of the day because it's just got flash here and there. You know, this is not normal on a Matchbox to see lumps of flash like you can see there. Yeah? Or here. Flash, 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 flash. It's on the parts, it's on there. This is not what we are used to from Matchbox. Anyway, we won't be too critical about that. Let's just have a look at these legs. There's a lot of ejector pin marks on it as well, absolutely everywhere, which is another thing that Matchbox are not really known for, not like this. Can you see those on these legs here? There's tons of ejector pins. Yep, there and there, there. And yeah, we've got them on the doors. Where are we? Sorry. Here? Here, on the doors, see those? Yeah. Bit nasty. Yep, not so good. Okay, it's a little bit disappointing, but we shall see what the rest has to offer. And here's a mighty sprue. This has got the wing parts and the drogue dispensers with the wheels. Again, it's quite flashy. I would say quite flashy. Oh no, it's got raised panel lines everywhere again. Yeah. I mean, the vortex generators, that's fine, they're supposed to be raised, but not here on the tail. That's raised. That's a bit grim there, that's not so good. Yeah. It's as though somebody else took up, well they did, didn't they? They took on this project after Matchbox Leslie was gone, the original company, who were so good at doing a decent job, you know. You think of the Heinkel 111, things like that. Really nice kit. The Mitchell's a nice kit. This doesn't feel to be in the same league, in all fairness. Shape-wise, it looks okay. I'm not the biggest expert on the Victor, I have to say, but we shall see. Again, very flashy as well. It just doesn't feel Matchbox-like, actually, to me. It feels more... It does feel more Airfix of the day, in mid-80s, I would say. But anyway, let's just get you another one and have a look. Sorry, we didn't look at the crew ladder. We got the crew ladder there and the pitot heads, which I missed when I was moaning about raised panel lines. Let's have a look at this one. I mean, again, joking apart, got the crew here, which are not brilliant, actually. They're not bad though, not terrible, but they just look like one of the cheaper kits. It doesn't feel like a kit that was probably about £6 when it came out, maybe £7-ish. But think back to my other reviews. The Harrier was nice. Yeah, shape-wise, I don't think they quite got that right, but it looked like a Harrier. The Wellington though was lovely. You know, that had no raised panel lines. It was all recessed. It was simple and softly moulded, and it wasn't flashy. No flash on that at all. It was beautiful. So bear that in mind. We're criticising it a little bit, but it's 35 years old. But better kits, perhaps in terms of the quality and the finish, came earlier. So this is what's happened when the asset strippers have got hold of the moulds, I think. Take them off to Macau and pumped them out as cheaply as they can. But it's not terrible, you know. The shaping's quite nice. It's just the raised, everything's raised. It's a bit nasty, you know. Even here, on the tanks underneath. Just a shame, really. I think they could have done a better job than that. What it goes together like, I really don't know. I've got no idea on this. Maybe people out there that have built this kit can comment, because I'd like to hear it. I really would. If it's true to the Matchbox, if they designed the moulds rather than the way it was executed, then it probably goes together really well. But it's an interesting point, actually, and should have just talked about the history of the Victor a little bit more as well. Of course, it was one of the 3 V bombers with the Valiant and the Vulcan. They discovered that when they decided the initial spec for these aircraft was high altitude bombing with nuclear weapons. But later that changed. They realised that the Russians, with their SAM missiles after the U-2 spy plane crisis, they could shoot down a high altitude aircraft, so they changed the spec after this was already in production, saying that they needed it to fly lower, so they made some modifications here and there. Didn't really like flying low. It wasn't at its best. It wasn't very manoeuvrable at low altitude. Unlike the Vulcan, of course, which with its delta wing was like a fighter almost, like a big fighter. So this is why the Vulcan became the preeminent nuclear strike bomber, because it could fly low, through valleys if necessary. It could evade radar. Victor struggled to do that. It had a bigger radar signature. It was bigger physically, a bit ungainly, but it was good. It was good as a high altitude aircraft, which is what it was supposed to be. But they ended up deciding to make the Victor a tanker in the end. The Valiant got withdrawn. That was the least good of the 3 aircraft, really. Not a bad aircraft, just not as good as the other 2. And the Vulcan became the champion and the bomber because it was so pilot friendly, and it was, you know, more adaptable. So they made these into the tankers, of course. Now, this is where the story gets very interesting, because in the Falklands War, right at the beginning of the Falklands War in April '82, they had this famous mission. The Argentinians had invaded the Falklands and captured the British garrison, who surrendered. Yeah. And then the British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher decided to send a naval task force to recover the islands. And in the meantime, I think it was going to take 5 weeks to get there. And in the meantime, they wanted to do something to stop the Argentinians reinforcing the garrison that they'd got on the island. So they sent the Vulcan, 2 Vulcans in fact, in the end, on this mission Black Book. And they had to be sent to Ascension Island, the nearest British territory, which is thousands of miles away. I think it's 2,500 to 3,000 miles away. It's a huge distance. and I may be wrong, I may be more than that, I didn't check the numbers, but it's a long way, it's right in the middle of the Atlantic. And the only way that they could physically make the logistics work for this mission was to have Victor tankers like this one. And there are, by the way, while I'm talking, here are the drogues. They're not very, they're not great, I've got to be honest. Just zoom you in just for 1 second to see this. I just realised those are the drogue cones, the baskets at the end. Can you see them? Sort of right in the centre of your image. There they are. Yeah. They're okay, but nothing special. Not really. Anyway, so for this mission they had to take off from Ascension Island, and they had the most astonishing logistics of any military operation, probably, certainly air operation in history. 15 Victor tankers had to work in a relay system that was so complicated that even the pilots of the Vulcans didn't understand it and had to rely on the logistics guys. And what they were doing was they were sending 15 Victors out first, and these 15 would keep refueling each other, and the one that was then had given up its fuel would obviously have enough to get back. They calculated how far they would go before they gave up, and they would peel back and go back to Ascension, leaving, 15 was down to 13, down to 11, down to 9, and then they keep going, and the Vulcans would keep getting refueled as they went. And they weren't just refueling the Vulcans, but refueling the other Victors. So the Victors were refueling each other in like a relay race. If you actually go online and you study this, there's like a plan they drew up that shows it, and it's incomprehensible. It's absolutely amazing, frankly, that this ever worked. And they had to do it so that they could get enough time for the Victors to get toward the Falklands, perhaps within 400 miles, and then circle, waiting for the Vulcans to bomb, and then come back, and then refuel them all the way back. So it was a mammoth logistical operation, like nothing the world's ever seen before, or since, frankly. Operation Black Book, you should definitely look it up and study this Victor refueling plan. Well, I'm sorry, but apart from a mathematician, I don't think anybody really ever looks at it and understands how on earth it worked properly. But in essence, it was a relay race of refueling, and it worked. Now, the main strike aircraft that was going to bomb Port Stanley, the first aircraft, developed some problems. They went through a lightning storm, and it had some problems with its, I can't remember its navigation, but they had some instrumentation issues, and they had to turn back, which left Martin Withers and his crew to bomb Port Stanley runway. Just the one Vulcan, would you believe, which seems, on the other side of the world from the UK, it seems quite incredible. This they did in 1982, and he actually bombed straddling the runway at sort of about a 30-degree angle, and he planted bombs, one bomb just off the centre of the runway, but so massive, these, I think they were 5,000-pound bombs, 3,000, can't remember, but they were quite biggish ones, and he dropped a stick of these right across the runway, and it wiped out several Argentinian Pucara aircraft. It put a great big hole in the middle of the runway, and it was out of action for some time. And I think he did a second run, and he went, and I think he knocked out a couple of ancillary vehicles and things, and some of the outlying areas, but it did quite a lot of damage for one aircraft. It put Port Stanley runway out of action. Anyway, that's the history lesson, but very interesting, and they managed to get back, and of course it was all over the papers in the UK about this amazing mission, and putting aside politics, and if any Argentinians watching, come on, it's all over now, let's just put it behind us. But from a military perspective, I'm sure the Argentine military forces must have themselves looked at this and scratched their heads and marvelled that it was ever possible. And I say, when you read the details of how it's done, it makes no sense at all. It's very complicated. Anyway, that is the Vulcan K2 from Matchbox. I have to say, we've got one more part, of course, we haven't looked at, which is the glass house, which on the Victor, of course, it has a lot of glass. It has this sort of praying mantis appearance, the Victor, which we'll probably see more of with the Airfix, which will probably make more sense to us. Yeah, we've got a few minor little scratches on this, but you get that with a 35-year-old kit, don't you? That's fine. And there's a little the nose glass underneath for the bomb aimer. That's okay. It's still in good, reasonable condition. Any scratches you can just, those will polish out. No problem at all. I think I've got to be frank on this one though. as one of the greatest Matchbox fans you'll ever find in modelling, because I've been obsessed with them really all my life. Very disappointed with this one really. I think you can tell that it wasn't a true Matchbox, and it was it just doesn't have that quality on the sprue. It doesn't have that cleanness and the raised panel lines and this flash. It doesn't really feel like a Matchbox normally does, but it probably build up okay, you know, probably fine to be honest. Time will tell on that. Let's just pop it back in its box. Bit of a collector's item there, so I'm sure that will probably stay somewhere safe for the medium to long term. But let us do the comparison with the latest friends of Airfix. Now we're really talking. Now this came out in 2016. I haven't seen this kit. I literally haven't seen it. I've never opened one, so this is completely new to me. I think I've seen the Victor Mk2 once before, but the Matchbox version. But let's have a look what we've got here. So this is A12008. Oops, so big I'm bashing everything. We've got this usual, box is so huge I'm struggling with it. We've got this usual more recent Airfix style where they have this sort of CGI 3D rendering images on the side, which I don't really care for, but it does give you a good idea about how it's built up, you know. It says here that it was tooling 2016, design 2016, permission of BAE Systems, which of course is what Vickers used to be. Oh, sorry, Vickers became BAE Systems, and it doesn't actually say where it's built. I think it's made in India. Doesn't say, which is unusual on Airfix. They normally tell you on the side. Hornby Hobbies. So another thing I should actually mention, just reminded me, talking about the demise of Matchbox. In their defence, I think they went out of business for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons was probably they were putting too much quality into the product, and they were almost too good for what they were charging. Some of those kits were very cheap, cheaper than the Airfix equivalents, and yet you've got colours, you've got dioramas, you've got all sorts of things that, you know, it couldn't have been a very big profit margin on those kits. But they weren't the only company that got into trouble at that time. You also had Meccano, who owned Dinky, who also went out of business the same year, I think, 82, 83. And you also had Metoy, who owned Corgi brand. They also went out of business, I think, within about 9 months themselves. So all these big British manufacturers that have been very successful for 15 or 20 years went bust, you know. And Mattel got the rights to the Matchbox cars, Mattel that do Hot Wheels, which again, I didn't think were as good. Okay, but not as good as Matchbox. So it's interesting to know the background. It's obviously very difficult. There's been a big recession in 81, 82 in the UK, and that had a big impact on the industry. You know. Anyway, back to the book and with Airfix. So let's have a look at this art on the side, which is going to give us a bit of an indicator. Now this time we are in English, which is quite good. Always helps, doesn't it? English, not Chinglish. And the page Victor was jet-powered strategic bomber, and alongside the other V bombers, the Valleys and the Victor. Was part of Britain's nuclear deterrent in the early part of the Cold War. It was designed to carry out long-range, high-altitude and then low-altitude attacks, which I mentioned, and then became a refueling air. Well, I kind of told you that story already, so let's move on and have a look at some of the marking options. So we have two here. We've got based at Wittering, both Wittering actually, which used to be a Hunter base. So the refueling, the bomber guys I should say, were at Wittering in 1963 to 64, and then at 68, this is when they changed to the low vis camo style, slightly different approach. Anyway, let's have a look what's in the box without further ado. Nice box artwork, I'm sure you'll agree, that's quite an impressive image there. Typically British looking day as it lifts off into the murk, you know. Let's pop that down there with its Matchbox cousin. Now then, oh gosh, we've had a big bag there of mini parts, and then oh no, it's one. Well, it was two bags, so let's do one bag. with all the big parts in it. Right. And then we've got hopefully readable and understandable instructions. Let's have a look. What have we got here? Stencil callouts, decals, Airfix instructions. Well, look at the decals first, I think. And this is obviously the, I mentioned the low vis camo, but they're not using the low vis decals here, are they? They're using the very, well, sorry, I'll rephrase that. They're using what's known as the early generation low vis decals that goes on the white aircraft, but they're not using the two-tone low vis RAF style that was more prevalent sort of 1970 onwards. So we have got low vis for white, and then we've got this high vis, which is a bit of a strange thing if you think about it. Red, white and blue on a low vis camo is a bit weird, but anyway, quite a lot of stencils. It doesn't say who has made the decals. It doesn't say who's done it. It looks to me like it's probably Cartograph. In all fairness, I think that's definitely Cartograph. You can kind of tell by their decals. They're always very minimalistic in terms of the carrier film, and they always look good, sharp, and there's no, you know, they're not thick. You can't feel them. They're very, very nice decals. I'm sure it's Cartograph. I think Airfix have been using them now for about 6 or 7 years. You've got there the instrumentation look for the cockpit, which looks really nice. They look fine, absolutely superb looking decals. You've got some nice, I mean there's obviously lots of stencils, but it's not as many as a Phantom. Let's have a look at this stencil guide. So, full stencil data, and given the size of aircraft I don't think it's excessive at all really, it's quite sensible really. You've got the blue steel nuclear weapon here. You've got some stencils obviously that's going on the probe here for its own refueling probe, and you can see this is what I said about the refueling each other. So another Victor would be here, refueling onto his probe here with the drogue in the basket. On the other side, we've got yet more. Hang on a minute, what's the difference? Position how many page B? Okay, I guess that they changed the stencil data when they changed the camo, so there's 2 versions, A or B, so just bear that in mind. And in terms of the actual colour callouts, here we go. So this is the white nuclear strike ablative paint, complete with the low vis markings. Very simple, straightforward, it's basically white, and then you've got your low vis, and again we've got, yeah, okay, so this is obviously a trend. They had this as port wing roundel only, which I didn't know about, so I've learned something here. And then you've got your, obviously your split camo, underneath it's, is it satin white? So they kept the satin white underneath, by the look of it. Yeah, they kept satin white as the underside, and they just put this low vis camo on the top. Anyway, it's nice and clear, and it's all in English, so that's great. Now let's have a look at these instructions. Right, bring you in. All in English, little bit of history, excellent. Now, if this is anything to go by, Airfix's instructions in the last 3 or 4 years, well, 5 years, been absolutely brilliant. And again, look how clear they are. You can't go wrong with these. They make a bit of effort. They do tonal differences and colours to make it quite clear what they're trying to communicate. Unlike, you know, 1 or 2 others that we've seen recently, which are frankly fairly incomprehensible, including people like AMK who haven't done it well at all. Even some of the Tamiya ones recently, that Spitfire review I did, it wasn't great. Anyway, building up your cockpit, having done your ejector seats, you've even got the, looks like the pedals here, which is great, rudder pedals. You've got the crew compartment with the various crew positions. The ones that sit behind, who are obviously managing the weapon systems and the navigation, sit back. A bit like Thunderbirds, isn't it? Huh? That reminds me of Thunderbirds a bit, where they're sort of sitting back to back, you know. You've got your 2 main crew coming in, engineer, and then these are guys who are on your nuclear weapons and tactical strike, you know, and communications guys. Because remember, this bomber was intended to drop nuclear bombs, I'm afraid to say. So it was not, yeah, it was never for pleasure rides, this one. So you're building up your wheel well bay underneath for the front nose leg, and you've got, again, it's so crisp and clear, this, you cannot, you know, misunderstand what they're trying to communicate. Very, very good. I don't know who's doing these instructions at Airfix, but I think everybody, Tamiya included, should have a good look at them and think they could do something similar to this and make theirs a little bit less, you know, better to have more pages with less information in each step, so that it's very clear and easily understood, especially by younger modelers. You know, you need that. Anyway, we're doing here the tail section, which is being built up. A few holes to drill, a bit of scraping to do, or 2 little nodules to remove. And you've got your tailer-ons. Then we've got our gear going in with the legs. And it looks very meaty, doesn't it? I've got a feeling this is going to be a bit nicer than the Matchbox one, if I'm going to be honest. I think that's an understatement and probably a foregone conclusion. Anyway, main gear. Now you've got to remember, this aircraft ended up with they changed the engines on it, I think, after about 18 months, 2 years, and it ended up having the Olympus Engines, which was just coming to here. And Olympus Engines, of course, was what they put in the Vulcan and in Concorde. So they're mighty, powerful engines, and of course, we've all seen the Vulcan and how it can do that. Howling and very slow speed, powering, nose up manoeuvre and climbing away, you know. Mighty powerful engines they were. Anyway, you're building up this central area here with your spars. It would seem it's like a spar system to support the actual wings here. Building up your central sort of spar and supports around the central fuselage, and then you're putting in your intakes. And these look well thought out. Hopefully they're going to go together okay. Looks like you've got your fan blades at the front. Gosh, there's lots of this. I'll have to speed up, otherwise you'll be here all day. So you're building in, this is the intakes, and they've got a hatch there for some reason, not quite sure why. And oh, okay, yeah. So you've got this. It's actually got the splitters for the 2 intakes. It's got quite a lot of detail, so it's not like the previous Vulcan, for example, that they did, which had this horrible, nasty intake. You've got the flow directors that manage the airflow into the engine at different speeds, which I presume are actually angleable. And then, you know, you've got a lot of detail in that intake there. That's massive detail, really. I've not seen that before. That looks really cool. Most impressed. And then you're onto your wheel well bays for the main gear being built up here with the walls. Then you've got the rear pipes here for the engine exits at the back. And there's quite a lot of trunking, isn't there? It's quite complicated the way they've done this. I hope it all goes together well. Probably will. They've been quite good lately. And then you're building up on these spars I mentioned. You're then building up your outer wing sections. So it's like it's in multiple sections, the wing. But unlike the Matchbox, this has got spars to support it to keep it rigid and at the right angle. And then you're putting in your cockpit, obviously, and then you've got your front rear bulkheads ahead of the bomb bay area. Then you are building up the back end here. This is the tail assembly with the air brakes, where your drogue system is as well. And there you can see it all goes in here. So again, quite complicated. I'm hoping this won't impact on the fit of the 2 sides, but we shall see. And then you bring in your finished cockpit right into the front there. I remember somebody saying that the Victor was a very claustrophobic aircraft. Well, the Vulcan was, I think, as well. They're very claustrophobic, considering what a big, huge beast it was. I mean, if you ever see the Victor, it looks like a massive insect. It's like this horrible, frightening looking aircraft. Like a praying mantis almost. You've got your little windows going in here, 1 or 2 holes, a little bit of holes to clear out for aerials. A hole that goes in the door needs to be cleared out. Another one at the back. And then we're going to bring the fuselage together, not forgetting at least 25 grams. That sounds quite light actually. 25 grams of weight to keep the nose down, because you don't want a tail sitting Victor. You've got a separate rudder, which is good. That's cool. And then you bring in this fuselage together with the wing coming down on top of it, and your bomb bay doors. Oops, bomb bay doors? No, sorry, this is the top. There's a top section where, like a central fillet that's going to go in here. Across that's the tail there, this end. So this is the top of the fuselage. That amazing V tail, which is almost as big as an aircraft itself. And then you've got some aerodynamic fairings ahead of your intakes. And you've got your wing tips being built up. So it's actually in 3 stages, not 2 stages, the wing on each side. It's amazing. That looks really nice. And again, the clarity of these instructions is absolutely crisp. So clear to understand what they're saying. No problem at all. I think Airfix, looking at this, are doing some of the best instructions that there are now, bar none. Certainly better than Great Wall Hobby as well. They're another one that can't do it. Right, here's your tail drogue chute area where the parachute pops out of when he lands. Because you need a big old, and it has got a massive parachute to help slow it down, this plane, because it's a big beast. And then finally you put the inboard sections of the lower wing cub in, a couple of holes to drill for the tag fittings, and then they are on. Putting in your gear, and if you look at this gear, again, I mentioned about the engines a few minutes ago. I think that this gear reminds me exactly of the Concorde gear, and the Vulcan. I think they almost use the same design, or very similar. You've got this 4 bogies with eight wheels on. And you've also got a splash guard at the front, stop stones flicking up on the nose wheel. And then we've got the doors going on, tailpipes coming in here. And then last but not least, strangely perhaps in terms of the order, we've got the instruments themselves and the yokes, flight control yokes going in. And that all goes in and they're inverting it, bring it in the right way. And then you're popping your nose glass on there. Underneath, that's the bomb aimer's window. And you've got some intakes, very intricate. There's lots of quite involved, detailed parts they've added. Instead of just moulding it in everything in one piece like on the Matchbox, which we saw. You've got your flaps, and these are unusual, aren't they? They actually come down, and I'll just zoom you in. They come down and they actually form shape around the actual engines. That's how intricate the flaps are. Amazing. And then they go flush obviously when they're closed here. That's pretty impressive as a piece of aircraft design. So those flaps go in on both sides, and again it shows you one by one very clearly. And they just pop on there. Then you're putting in your tanks, and then you're moving on to your bomb bay doors, and in this case it's the loose steel weapon, which we'll come to in a second. You've got your fairings and your underwing tanks here, and you've got intakes for ram air turbine type intakes for compressor drives and things for powering various systems in flight, and then you've got your air intakes similar for driving compressors at the rear, that's on the top of the fuselage ahead of the tail. And then you're bringing in 1 or 2 bits of trim. Obviously there's the nose of the tail, so to speak, here, which goes on there. And then you've got your glass coming in, your glass work. The greenhouse, I think they call it. And then you've got your refueling probe as well here. And last but not least, the rather terrifying blue steel nuclear weapon, which is the size of a Spitfire pretty much, not far off. It's a big thing, massive, a big old beast actually. And it's got the folded tail. You've got the angleable canards at the front, and you see how you position it so it's folded, and then you pop it into its specially shaped bomb bay underneath, like so. And then last but not least, we are bringing all these final parts together. Pitot heads, again, you've got your ladder for the crew door, all goes on, and I think that's pretty much it. That is it. So, well, I've got to say that the instructions are fantastic. If the kit's as good as the instructions, it'll be a dream, to be honest. They're really good. You know, you don't get kit's better than that really, in terms of trying to impart the information that you understand what you're trying to achieve. I remember we did the review of the Wellington, which we talked about earlier, and that was a great kit, and that had good instructions as well, and really thought it out well. Now then, I've been told I've got to open these, so there's only 2 bags, so I will do this as sensitively as I can, in such a way that will enable it to be sort of taped up later. If you'll just bear with me, it says. Never as easy as you think, is it? I think I've not nicked it enough. There we go. Right, we're in. If I just do this very carefully. Unfortunately my scissors seem to be a bit blunt, which isn't helping my case at all, of course I should say. They really are blunt, they're not sharpening, sorry about that. That means that the bag can be reused and taped up afterwards. So, let's see what we got here, because we've got a massive bag. So there's no bits. Nope, nothing off the sprue, that's good. What have we got? This is going to take a while, I better warn you. Right, oh, we have got a part off the sprue there, but that's clearly a bit of sprue. I'm sure that's not a part. No. Put it back in the bag anyway. Now then, look at this, it's huge. Now then, let's see how this compares to the Matchbox. Right, well it's recessed, all recessed. You can see the difference immediately, can't you? Look at this. What a difference, huh? He says, and now it goes out of focus. What a difference that is. That is incredible. Really nicely done. Very fine. It's got hatches, it's got panels, little flaps that open, everything as it should be. And there's no flash on this either. It's flash free. It looks really nice, gorgeous. No race panel lines at all. So this is exactly what you'd expect from a modern, you know, sophisticated, manufactured kit that's been designed properly. Very nice shaping, very intricate, and you know there's some complicated parts here in terms of shaping. So they've done a fine job of this. And look at this spar system here for the actual engines at the top of the wings to give it strength. It's just like the real thing. That's pretty much the design of the real aircraft, I'm sure. That is a lovely sprue. And the plastic is this sort of, this is a really nice plastic actually for Airfix, because sometimes they have this, what I call blue tack style, almost like plasticine, soft, chinky, which can be good for working with and can give some issues as well, but I prefer it a bit harder, and this is a bit harder. Yeah, that's more perhaps old school. Oh, I'll tell you one thing I will say though, it's a bit of warpage here. It's a bit warped. It's quite warped actually. If you look at, I don't know if you can pick this up on the camera, it might be more difficult to see it, but the actual, see how it's warped here? And the tail is warping in. It's probably warping in the right direction in fairness. I don't think that will give you a big issue. But yeah, there is a bit of Meng like yanking out the mould a bit too soon there, I suspect. Let's see if the other side's the same out of interest. Yeah, that's kind of warped as well, see it? A bit warpy. But I don't think that's going to have much impact because of where the warping is actually mainly away from the fuselage. That one, the fuselage piece, is less warped than the other ones. So that's okay. Let's have a look at the detail though. In fact, I'll just move that first one. Nice sprue, I like it. I just shame about the warping, but not too bad. Not too bad. At least the part's not warped beyond belief like we had with Meng on the triplane, you know. Look at the detail here. This is the intakes for the engines, and there's no ejector pin marks on there. Don't know if you can make this out. Let's have a look. That looks very, very clean. You've got the bulkheads front and rear, ahead of and behind the bomb bay area. You've got the cabin cockpit floor here, which looks really nicely done. And here you've got the instrumentation for the cockpit. which looks fantastic really. 72nd scale, that's very good. And then you've got parts of the tail, and again, clean moulding, no ejector pins where they shouldn't be. Looks really nice, very very nice. And I say that one's a bit less warped, so we won't complain about that one. Look at the size of these parts, it's like bigger than some of my models in their entirety. Right, what's we got here then? So we've got the central area that is the top, I think I'm right, saying the top of the fuselage here, yeah, and the bottom underneath here. So this is the, I have to zoom you out, it's that big. So we've got the top of the central fuselage and the top of the inboard wings here, and that's really nice. Fantastic detail here with the little hatches and things. You know, you're going to get that to take a wash very very nicely. You've got all the riveting detail, engraved panel lines. I mean, that looks Tamiya-like in its quality, I'd say. That's really really good. Let's see that again. That is exceptional for Airfix. In fact, the quality of this kit is starting to remind me of the Wellington, which I thought was one of the best. I think I said it was a 10 out of 10. I think I've only given that twice now. One to Tamiya, one to Airfix. This looks similar. Don't know what it builds like. So anything I say today, it's not an after build review, obviously, because I haven't got one of these myself. But yeah, if I did have one, I don't know where I put it because it's big. It's going to be a right monster, isn't it? Look at that! Wow, it's going to fill the desk. Anyway, you've got your flaps and your trim parts of your ailerons here. I keep having to zoom in now because it's so massive I can't get it in the shot, so forgive me. That's the beauty though, that's a beautiful beautiful sprue, and I say Tamiya-like in quality, that is. Impressive. Let's have a look at this one. Now then, what have we got here? We have got, these are the mid section of the wing, because it's in 3 sections as I said earlier. It's so huge. That again, it's more of the same, it's beautiful. Very fine, crisp finish, a nice surface which is like a satin. You've got some very you know, sharp pointed parts here, and there's no flash on them, which is really good. Look at that. Sorry if you can hear a noise in the background, it's not running water, it's leaves blowing around. We've got a bit of a windy day here in the UK. Here's your underwing tanks. Can't fault that. Lots of ejector pins on the other side, but who cares, that's not a problem, is it? Doesn't matter there. Then we have got the Bombay. Now this sprue has got, you see, this is where some guys, you know, even Tamiya sometimes don't quite get it right. They suffer with ejector pins, but there's none here. There's nothing, all that detail is supposed to be there. That's really nice. So you've got the, I think you've got the option of having it open or closed. Oh no, it's not open or closed, is it? It's just the it's for the cover. But yeah, I think you can have it open, otherwise they wouldn't show the internal detail. But it looks very very good, and again, no ejector pin problems there either, so that's really good. Now then, we have got a bag. I think after the last experience I'm going to use a knife on this, but I didn't do too well, did I? So I think it might be simpler if I go here and run the blade through it. There we go. Okay, put it to both sides, unfortunately, but never mind. Right. Clear parts, let's have a look at those. I won't. You like the clear parts? Yeah, go on then, I like the clear parts. This is a big bag, so it won't be a problem for resealing it at a later point. Now then. Oops, I took that off. Yes, now this is clever of Airfix. What they've done here, because you've got some quite big navigation lights on the tips of the wings are actually clear. It's the underside of the wing at the tip, so that you can paint on your colours on the inside, and then you can mask it off, and then just paint the white or grey or whatever it is, to give you a perfect result and a visible sort of window lens effect of the light. That's clever. That's copying sort of Tamiya style actually. That's quite a good move for them. I'm impressed with that. That's a big step forward for Airfix. Here we've got the glasswork for the greenhouse for the cockpit. There's not much window, is there? It must have been pretty dark in there. Scary dark. Lovely sprue though. That's really clear as well. Distortion? No. Is there a mark on there? Might be a... I think there's a faintest of faint marks. No. Is it gone? Maybe a very faint. It's a faint line. I can't decide if it's supposed to be there or not. I think it might be supposed to be there. It may be like a little tiny internal frame. Yeah, it seems the same on both sides. I don't know if you can see this. I don't think I can probably show it you properly, but the human eye, Mark 1 eyeball, is picking it up. Anyway, beautiful sprue, no complaints. I can now reseal all these afterwards, so nothing comes loose in transit or anything. Now then, when it goes back to its original owner, of course. So, blue steel, what a nasty weapon. The original cruise missile. Huge thing. I mean, look at it. It's about the same size as a V1 flying bomb, isn't it? If not bigger. And this is the bay in which it actually sits, in the recess underneath in the bomb bay. I mean, these parts look fantastic. Really good detail. Even the blue steel bomb, there's lots of little areas here where you can see it's got recess and little hatches, access hatches, rivets. Fabulous. This is the tail, piece here. The drogue chute comes out of there when it's landing, with its parachute. Again, very nice. It's a wonderful looking thing. I've got to say, it's. I think this might even be better than the Wellington. I think it's going to get a good rating at the end. And look at this. We've got gazillions of parts. I'm just going to quickly show you around at close zoom. A lot of small parts on the kit, aren't there? Jeez. This obviously is your, where are we? That one. This is your sort of mud guard behind the nose wheel. But look at the detail on these in terms of these seats, for example, compared to the Matchbox, which was just a typical 72 scale kit. Here you've got belts built in, you've got contours, you've got more belts here. Absolutely brilliant. Superb. And then you've got those intake fairings we spoke of. You've got your ejector seats here. There we are. Stunning, very nice. And then another one, and this is the sprue. Now this is markedly better than the Matchbox, I'm afraid. This is the one that's got all the wheels and tyres on it, and the wheels and tyres look really, really clean, don't they? Very crisp looking. You can recognise them straight away as being those sort of Victor Vulcan wheels and tyres. You've got your compressor blades here for the engine intake, and then you've got various hatches and tailpipes here, fairings here and here, crew ladder there. Very good, all good stuff. Again, can't see any nasty flash or faults or anything. Got this meaty, sorry, I'll bring you out again, meaty undercarriage for this big heavy aircraft, you know. And look at it, very, very rugged looking undercarriage parts here. Wow. In the front section, undercarriage for the nose like there. You've got some beautiful detail here for the internal, some of the internal structure inside the cockpit, I think that is. And the flaps. And some of the trunking obviously for the engines there. Whoops. And then final sprue actually, and it's a nice one as well. Look at this. So this has got the think this is that the exit? Or I'm not sure whether that's the fan blades for the back end or the front end. I've got a feeling that might be the back end. It's actually halfway down the fuselage where the exit at the engine itself, but obviously then there's trunking all the way to the back. But look at the beautiful figuring there. And look at the great detail for the tail section here where the air brakes are. And then you've got the lovely fairing for the exit of the engines at the tailpipe here. Very nice. And you've got your I think that's for the nose of the tail section where it's got that aerodynamic, like a nose on it, fairing. You've got your front leg here, and then you've got some. This is the piece that goes on the top. It's got where the antennas are. I think the radio aerial antennas are on the top of the fuselage, and then you've got this this amazing flap that I talked about earlier, which is the shaped flap that goes around the engine. In this bizarre shape, and yet still acts as a flap, which is incredible, really. And then there's a couple of bulkheads. Wow. I'm actually quite blown away by this. I thought it'd be good kit, you know. I mean, having seen the Wellington and the Hunter and these other kits recently that Airfix have done. But that has exceeded my expectations by quite a lot, you know. I mean, that is a light years ahead of the Matchbox one. And as everybody knows, I'm a big Matchbox fan because I do all these reviews on Matchbox. I don't really feel that Victor is a good representation of what Matchbox were doing. It doesn't feel like a Matchbox to me, that one. It's more Revell or maybe Airfix of the era. But this Airfix is more Tamiya. I think this is so good. I think if that had Tamiya logos on it, I would believe it. I would believe it. It's wonderful. The you know, there's no ejector pins where there shouldn't be. The detail is there. You know, even inside these the doors for the gear, you know, ejector pins, and there's lots of internal detail and recesses. It's absolutely fantastic, I've got to be honest. So, if you just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to grab the front box because everything else is in a bit of a position. So, this was obviously a tale of two Victors. There's one, there's the other. As is normal, there's only going to be one winner, isn't there? But to be fair, the Matchbox disappoints me a lot, being brutally honest. It doesn't feel like a Matchbox. It's not terrible. It may build beautifully, so I say, if anybody's built it, please let me know. It probably builds okay, but it just, I don't know. And they're obviously one of the most expensive ones they ever did, and I don't think it justifies it. It's not made to the same standard as they previously built them, but anyway, I'd give the Matchbox 6.5 out of 10. I hope that's not too harsh. I think that's maybe 6.5. I mean, the fact that there's no English on it doesn't help, you know, come on. I mean, it doesn't matter what year it is. That's ridiculous, quite frankly. Anyway, Airfix. I'm struggling to think of anything I can actually criticise it for, honestly, apart from the fact it all comes in two bags in this case, okay. But I wish they'd stop doing that. Put them in separate bags, yeah. Make them recyclable bags or biodegradable bags, that's fine. Apart from that, it's beyond criticism. That is beautiful. What a fantastic kit. It's breathtaking. It's 10 out of 10. So 6.5 for Matchbox, 10 out of 10 for Airfix. And I'm not just saying that, it is absolutely stunning, that kit. Absolutely gorgeous. One of the best kits I've laid eyes on. It ranks up there with the Wellington and that Tamiya ME BF 109 G6 that we did recently. So that's 3, I'm giving 10. It's only the third to get 10 out of 10, but it deserves it for sure. Nothing not to like. The end. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's been a bit long one because obviously there's a lot of parts to look at and two kits. Hope you enjoyed it. It didn't quite go the way I expected. I thought the Matchbox would be better, and I thought the Airfix wouldn't be as good as it was. I thought they'd be closer, but no, they're light years apart, absolute light years. So don't hold it against Matchbox because it's not the true Matchbox company that built that, really. So we'll just put it as that. Thank you to the person who lent me these. It's very kind of him indeed, especially to let me open the bags, which, you know, especially with a new kit like that, it's never been opened before. I think it's nice for you, the viewer, to be able to see the detail parts without all the reflections. And if you're in the market for a Victor, there is only one place to go, frankly. I don't think I'd even consider anything else ever. I think that's an absolute knockout kit and a clear winner. So there you go. If you want a monster praying mantis Victor, Airfix is the way to go. Okay, so well done, Airfix. Thanks very much to you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it and give me 10 out of 10. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, and don't forget to click the notification bell, because obviously if you do that and ding it, you'll get notification every time a new video comes up and you won't miss out. So that just remains for me to say thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon with some more reviews and interesting videos for your entertainment. In the meantime, stay safe, look after yourselves. I'm reaching for my remote control. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much, and bye bye for now.